The Ford Ranchero is a coupe utility that was produced by Ford between 1957 and 1979. Unlike a pickup truck, the Ranchero was adapted from a two-door station wagon platform that integrated the cab and cargo bed into the body. A total of 508,355 units were produced during the model's production run. It was adapted from full-size, compact and intermediate automobiles sold by Ford for the North American market. During the 1970s, the Ranchero name was used in the South African market on a rebadged Australian Ford Falcon utility. These vehicles were sent to South Africa in CKD form, and assembled at the Port Elizabeth plant. In Argentina, a utility version of the locally produced Ford Falcon was also called Ranchero. The Ford Ranchero sold well enough to spawn a competitor from General Motors in 1959, the Chevrolet El Camino. History: the first Ford Model T and Model A pickup trucks were created from sedans by placing a truck box behind the body of a car truncated behind the driver's seat. In 1934, Ford Australia's designer Lou Band modified a coupe with a smoothly integrated load bed that could be used like a car to drive to church or to deliver pigs to market. This created the coupe utility, which remains a popular body style as the ute in Australia. In North America, pickup trucks evolved into a heavier-duty form with cabs and beds that were quite distinct from passenger automobiles. The Ranchero was the first post-war American vehicle of its type adapted from a popular sedan from the factory. It combined the sleek looks of a sedan with the utility of a light-duty pickup truck. In 1955, GM introduced a fully loaded top model of the Chevrolet and GMC light-duty pickup truck, called the Chevrolet Cameo Carrier and the GMC Suburban Carrier. 1957 Euro 1959, see also 1957 Ford, introduced in December 1956, 3 months after the traditional September model year startup. The Ranchero was based on the standard and new for 1957 full-size Ford platform, specifically the short-wheelbase custom sedan, two-door ranch wagon, station wagon and utilitarian courier sedan delivery. Essentially a courier with an open, reinforced bed, its own unique rear window and integrated cab and cargo box, the Ranchero was initially offered in 2 trim levels and, throughout the model run, was built on the corresponding automobile assembly line but sold as a truck through Ford's truck division. There was an extremely basic standard model, marketed to traditional pickup truck buyers such as farmers, and the custom, which picked up most of the options and accessories available on the Falcon line, including stainless steel body side moldings and two-tone paint. Upscale models were badged both as a Falcon and Ranchero, with a stylized representation of a longhorn as the symbol for the model located on the tailgate. Indeed, print advertising of the time played on the theme of the American Southwest that the Spanish model name and longhorn symbol were meant to evoke, showing artistic representations of the vehicle being used in ranching and outdoor activities, proclaiming it as more than a car, more than a truck. The Ranchero was a hit with both the automotive press and the buying public, filling an untapped market niche for vehicles with the utility of a light pickup with the ease of operation and riding characteristics of a car. In fact, the Ranchero had a marginally higher cargo capacity by about 50 pounds per 23 kilograms than the half-ton F-Series pickup. Both standard and custom could be ordered with any engine available for Ford cars, all the way up to the 352 cubic inches Thunderbird Special. In Canada, the Ranchero was also available in the Meteor lineup. Seat belts and padded instrument panels were optional. The 1958 version would remain largely unchanged under the skin save for the new front sheet metal and its new 4-headlamp arrangement. The 1959 model was built with the same 118 in wheelbase as all 1959 Fords, giving the Ranchero the advantage over its predecessors of a new, longer 7-feet bed. However, this would be the last time that the vehicle would grow either in size or trim for several years to come. The windshield was also 25% larger. Seat covers were vinyl or woven plastic, while the spare tire was located behind the passenger seat. The custom Ranchero was the only model marketed in 1959, and was offered in 26 colors. 1960 Euro 1965 Falcon Ranchero. In 1960 the Ranchero became much smaller, becoming based on Ford's compact Falcon, specifically the two-door sedan delivery variant. The popularity of small, economical cars like the Volkswagen Beetle perpetuated a shift in thinking among the three largest American manufacturers. 1959 would see the introduction of the 1960 Falcon along with the 1960 Chevrolet Corvair and Plymouth Valiant. A pickup version of the Volkswagen bus and a van based on the Chevrolet Corvair were offered as well. The economic recession of the late 1950s certainly played a role as well. Ford believed the market wanted a more practical vehicle, one much smaller, lighter and cheaper than a full-size pickup truck, and indeed the Ranchero sold well in this incarnation. Now marketed in print as the Falcon Ranchero, the new vehicle's standard powerplant was an economical 144 cubic inches straight six. In 1961 the 170 cubic inches straight six was offered, and in 1963 the optional 260 cubic inches V8 was offered in addition to the 144 and 170. The two-speed Ford-O-Matic automatic transmission or three-speed C4 Cruise-O-Matic could be ordered as could a three-speed manual transmission. The Ranchero had an 800 pounds load capacity. Note that there are three almost entirely different coupe copyright utility bodies for this generation of Falcon. The Australian Falcon Ute differed in having a shorter rear overhang than North American models, a cargo box that extended farther forward than the rear window, and shorter doors. While the Argentinian version also shared the sedan's overall length and short four-door doors, adding higher and more squared-off cargo box sides. The Ranchero evolved along with the Falcon in 1964, becoming just a little larger along with its parent and using the same basic body style for 1964 and 1965. In 1965, the 289 cubic inches V8 replaced the discontinued 260 and an alternator replaced the generator in all Ford cars. 1966 Euro 1967, 1966 was a one-year model, when Falcon and Fairlane were redeveloped on the same basic platform, one which did not include the sedan delivery as 1965 marked the final year of sedan delivery production. Instead, the 1966 Ranchero used Falcon front sheet metal, trim and interior accents on a modified station wagon platform. Engines available were the 170 cubic inches i6, 200 cubic inches i6 and 2 and 4 barrel versions of the 289 cubic inches V8. Transmissions choices ranged from the C4 3-speed automatic to the 3-speed column-shifted manual. The 1966 model was marketed simply as the Ford Ranchero, and did not carry Falcon badges. Seat belts were standard. The 1967 Ranchero, based on the post-66 Falcon Fairlane chassis, used the basic 1966 Ranchero body with Fairlane trim, front sheet metal, and interior treatments instead of Falcon. It was marketed as the Fairlane Ranchero. This was a well-received and unique one-year vehicle, with clean, straight lines, dual-stacked headlamps, and plenty of power. The Ranchero had entered the muscle car arena in 1967. Engine options started with a 200 cubic inches straight six and went up to a 390 cubic inches FE series big block V8 giving 315 bhp and backed by an optional C6 automatic, the new for 1966 heavy-duty variant of the C4. 1967 also saw the largest expansion of trim levels since the vehicle's introduction 10 years prior. Supplementing the base model were the new Ranchero 500, 500/XL and GT. The GTA, Ford's label for 66 and 67 automatic transmission-equipped GTs given to both the Fairlane and Mustang, did not apply to the Ranchero. What did apply to all American cars in 1967 was the use of a dual-circuit braking system with a dual-chambered master cylinder. Increased awareness of passenger safety resulted in such innovations as safety-padded windshield pillars and an unusual 1967-only safety pad which protruded from the center of the three-spoked steering wheel to a point just beyond the rim of the steering wheel. It was designed to minimize abdominal injuries in the event of a collision. 1968 Euro 1969, in 1968, the Fairlane line was supplemented by the new Torino, and the Ranchero followed suit. becoming the largest model since the full-sized 1959. Overall, the new Ranchero was not only bigger, but also more angular than before with its more horizontal grille and horizontal headlamps. Ford and other automakers were making a switch back to horizontal quad headlamps. The interior was all new, as well, sharing the Torino Falcon's distinctive four-pod instrument cluster. Though the four round pods gave the illusion of an engine-turned dash, viewed from left to right, they instead featured warning lights for coolant temperature and a left-turn signal indicator in the left pod with the speedometer in the second pod directly in front of the driver. Warning lights for the charging system and oil pressure as well as the right-turn signal indicator were located third from the left. In upscale models, this pod was supplanted by a tachometer. An optional clock filled the fourth pod. A decorative clock delete panel otherwise filled the space. A seat belt warning light was a new feature too, lighting briefly in the far left pod whenever the engine was started. The model line also featured wraparound front side marker lamps which doubled as parking lights and rear side reflectors, newly mandated by U.S. law for the 1968 model year. 3 trim levels were offered, beginning with the sparsely trimmed base Ranchero, the Ranchero 500 trimmed like the corresponding Falcon 500 and the top-of-the-line Ranchero GT with its Torino GT trim. Engine choices began with the 250 cubic inch i6 and ran to several V8 choices, including the standard 289 with 2-barrel carburetor, and the FE-based 390. The powerful 428 cubic inches Cobra Jet, another FE derivative and the largest engine offered in the Ranchero to date, was a mid-1968 option. The 1968 model marked the final year of production of the 289. A 302 cubic inches V8 with 2-barrel carburetor became the standard V8 in 1969. 2 new upmarket engine choices were available, the 351 Windsor with 2 and 4-barrel carburation. The FMX Automatic was available with both, which was a variant of the old Cruise-O-Matic and was offered exclusively with either 351. Like the Torino Falcon, the Ranchero could be had with virtually all of the same options as its cousins, including air conditioning, bucket seats, center console, AM/FM radio, optional wheels, front power disc brakes, hood scoop and even a vinyl top. Changes across the 1969 model line were slight and included a flatter 3-piece grille less the horizontal crossbar and Ford crest, relocation of GT grille badging from the crest to the lower right corner of the grille as viewed from the front, a change from black-faced instruments with white numerals to brushed aluminum with black numerals and a slimmer, 2-spoke steering wheel pad similar to those across the Ford product line, unlike the wheel with its broader safety pad, and separate horn ring used in the 1968 intermediates and compacts. While the pad may have changed, the horn ring did not. The only change unique to the Ranchero was the relocation of the Ranchero script from the rear quarter panels to the front fenders. A little-known and extremely rare offering in 1969 was the Rio Grande. Available on special order, this was essentially a GT in the so-called grabber colors of Wimbledon white, poppy red, or calypso coral, partially blacked-out hood with scoop, side stripes, bed rails, vinyl top and unique Ford Ranchero Rio Grande wheel centers. As a result, Ranchero so equipped received Ford's Special Performance Vehicle identification on the data plate regardless of engine choice. These vehicles may be identified by the aforementioned designation, as well as a blank space where the trim code would normally be found. Production figures are unclear, but may have been around 900 total units. At the Detroit Motor Show in 1969 was shown a concept car Ford Scrambler, some elements of which were used in the next models of Ford Ranchero. 1970–1971, while Chevrolet's El Camino used the same body from 1968 to 1972, 1970 saw a complete restyle for Ranchero, which had started with a boxy body style. Both the Torino and Ranchero featured a shallow pointed grille and front end with smooth, somewhat more curvaceous lines influenced by Coke bottle styling. A fourth trim option was made available in 1970. The Ranchero Squire was an upmarket trim package which featured a wood grain applique similar to that found on the Country Squire station wagon. Like in previous years, all Torino trim and engine options could be ordered, including all new Ram Air 429 Cobra Jet or Super Cobra Jet engines with the new shaker hood scoop, so named because it was directly mounted to the carburetor and shook with the engine at idle. Also available was a stylish grille that featured hideaway headlamps as well as an optional hood with an oversized scoop which was standard on Torino GTs. The 1971 is distinguished by a grille divided by a center section. A minor but nevertheless important variation debuted with a 1970 model. Prior to 1970, no Ranchero had any interior badging identifying it as such. With the 1970 model came a Ranchero, or Ranchero GT badge on a glove compartment rather than Fairlane or Torino badging. 1972 a Euro 1976, in 1972, a radical change occurred in the Torino and Ranchero lines. The sleek, pointy look of the previous year's model was replaced with a larger, heavier design. Most prominent was a wide semi-oval grille reminiscent of a jet intake and a new body-on-frame design. There were still 3 models available. The now standard 500, the new Squire with simulated wood grain paneling along the flanks, and the sporty GT. Engine choices remain basically the same, beginning with the 250 cubic inch 6-cylinder and a selection of V8s that ranged from the standard 302 to Cleveland and Windsor Series 351s, plus the new for 1972 400. The 385 Series V8 was still available. However, all suffered from lower compression ratios to better meet new emission standards. The 351 cubic inches Cleveland could still be obtained in tuned 4V Cobra Jet form through 1974. A 4-speed manual transmission was available on Cobra Jet-powered GT models. The 1973 Ranchero saw a redesigned front end to meet new federal standards for front impact protection. Aside from slight cosmetic differences, the Ranchero would remain basically the same until the Torino's final year, 1976. 1977 a Euro 1979. With the Torino ending production after 1976, the Ranchero needed a new platform. This was found in the somewhat unlikely guise of the Ford Thunderbird personal luxury coupe, which was undergoing a reincarnation that year also, and sharing features with that year's Ford LTD2 mid-size car. The same 3 models available since 1968 were still offered, and the Ranchero could be ordered in quite luxurious form. Engines fitted went up to the big block 400 cubic inches. Production ceased in 1979 with, among the traditional choices, a commemorative 1979 1/2 model. Although the LTD2 was not produced for many model years, this body style with stacked rectangular headlamps is among the most popular among collectors. Cars were getting smaller and increasing government restrictions, and requirements on a car-based pickup truck made such a vehicle less and less attractive from a manufacturing standpoint. Meanwhile, purpose-designed light trucks had to meet much less stringent requirements for emissions and fuel economy. Ford saw the way the market was going and decided small light trucks were the wave of the future, beginning with the Mazda-built Courier pickup. This vehicle would be a stepping stone, during which time Ford would develop their homegrown replacement, the Ranger. Argentine Ranchero. From 1973 to 1991, Ford Motor Argentina developed and sold a utility version of its own Ford Falcon called the Ford Ranchero. The first generation sold very well, and in 1974 exports began to Cuba. Later that year it became the best-selling car in Argentina, with a total of 110,382 sold between 1973 and 1978. Production of the second-generation model lasted from 1978 to 1982, and production of the third generation lasted from 1982 to 1987. In 1987 the fourth and final generation was released, and in 1988 a diesel model was added to the lineup for the first time, however it was discontinued as of 1989. Production of the fourth-generation Argentine Ranchero ended in 1991. Today, Rancheros are reasonably collectible, though they are nowadays often overlooked in favor of the later-arriving Chevrolet El Camino, which stayed in production 8 more years. Miniatures. apart from hand-cast resin kits from cottage industry makers, are rare. Several Revel offerings of the 1957 model in both 1/32 and 1/25 scale have been offered over the years, as has a kit of the 1961 Ranchero by AMT Artel. A well-detailed promotional model of the 1959 intended for distribution by dealers was offered both with and without interior trim, windows and friction drive by AMT Artel's predecessor, SMP. Resin castings of this model's body are offered by the aforementioned cottage industries, as well. There are no Matchbox versions, but Johnny Lightning makes a 1964 model. Hot Wheels and Adult Collectible 57 and 2011 HW Premier 65 Ford Ranchero Racing Champions made a 1/64 scale 1957 Ranchero, and AMT Artel currently produces a die-cast 57 which doubles as a bank. AMT was responsible for other early dealer promotional models too, including those of the aforementioned El Camino. Tonka produced a resin toy version of the 1968-69 model in roughly 1/24 scale as part of an auto transporter set. The front end of that toy arguably resembles the 1969 model more closely. The idea of a car-based pickup remains an attractive one, and is an illustration of how favorable treatment for light trucks over cars by United States regulations skews the marketplace. There are many Ranchero and El Camino owners, indeed, who stopped buying new vehicles when those models were discontinued. Aftermarket conversions of the Fairmont Futura and Mercury Zephyr Z7 Sport Coupes to a Ranchero-like Durango pickup were sold in select Ford dealers in the early to mid-1980s. Recently, there has been more interest in producing such vehicles again, including those like the Subaru Barger, essentially an outback station wagon with a stubby pickup bed instead of an enclosed cargo area. The Barger, like the Ranchero, is titled in most American states and Canadian provinces as a commercial vehicle. Until the late 2000s, the North American market tended to lean towards compact and mid-sized crew cab four-door pickups such as the Ford Explorer Sport Track and Chevrolet Colorado. However, with the compact pickups having grown towards mid-size and encroaching on base models of more profitable full-size pickups, some manufacturers such as Ford and Ram Trucks have discontinued even their compact and mid-size offerings. Ford discontinued the North American Ranger in 2012 and opted not to sell its global replacement in North America due to being too close in size and price to the base model Ford F-150. In Australia, Ford continues to produce a car-based pickup, the FG Falcon Ute. References. External links: Ranchero in the Netherlands, Europe, Dearborn Classics Ranchero history page with photos, Ranchero and coupe utilities in Sweden, Bill's Classic Cars, 1967 Ranchero, 63 V8 4-speed Ranchero registry, naming the unnamed Pontiac sport truck, the Ranchero Fan Club, FordConParts.com, official website of the Ford Discovery Centre of Australia, 1963 Ford Ranchero.